Hi everybody, welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name's Laurel, I'm the assistant manager here. Very happy to have you all here tonight. Thank you for joining us in person. Also hello to our online audience. Tonight we will be celebrating Nell Zink's new book, Sister Europe, in conversation with Rita Bullwinkel. We have a really stocked month of events coming up. This is a great way to kick it off. So please check our calendar online for that. And please take this time to silence your cell phones. You're welcome to take pictures, but please just make sure the sound's off. And if you post them, tag us. And last little plug is please buy books from us. Independent bookstores are so important now more than ever, and the work that we do helps support the community and these authors in doing their amazing, important work. So,
and the work Jeff Bezos does helps destroy civilization.
Exactly.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, so today, just a little run of show. We're going to hear a conversation between Rita and Nell, interspersed with some readings. And afterwards, we'll have a Q&A and a signing line, just right at the back desk there. So Rita Bullwinkel is the author of the short story collection Belly Up, which won a 2022 Writing Award. Both her fiction and translation have been nominated for Pushcart Prizes. She's the editor of McSweeney's, the deputy editor of The Believer, a contributing editor for Noon, and an assistant professor of English at University of San Francisco, where she teaches courses in creative writing, zines, and the uses of invented and foreign languages as tools for world building. Headshot, her debut novel, was longlisted for the Booker Prize in 2024. We still have some signed copies left. You can ask for that at the front desk. And Nell Zink grew up in the Tidewater region of Virginia. She did a variety of service and administrative jobs before becoming a professional novelist at age 50. Her books to date include The Wall Creeper, Mislaid, Private Novelist, Nicotine, Doxology, and Avalon. 3 of her books became New York Times notable books, and 1 was longlisted for the National Book Award. Her writing has appeared in N+1, Granta, and Harper's Magazine. In 2022, she served as the Friedrich Dürrenmatt Guest Professor for World Literature at the University of Bern, Switzerland. And her latest book, Sister Europe, is the reason we're here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Rita Bullwinkel and Nell Zink. Woo!
No, I'm so, this mic is so wonderful. No, I'm so happy to be here with you this evening. I love this book so much. There's so many things I want to talk about with this book, but I wonder if, in your own words, give us a brief overview. What happens in this novel?
Well, in this novel, 6 people, I think it's 6, it depends on how you count, because there's a cop following them. They get together at the Intercontinental Hotel in the west of Berlin, which is a part of Berlin that doesn't really get looked at a lot in fiction, because when hip expats go to Berlin, they're hanging out in Neukölln and Kreuzberg, and they don't even know Charlottenburg exists. They don't know that there's an established bourgeois West Berlin and always has been. And well, that's where they start. But by the time this gala dinner is over, they're pretty hungry. So they start walking to Burger King. And those are that's basically the central vector of the novel, from the Intercontinental Hotel to Burger King.
It's so fun. Yeah, it's so interesting. This is my totally incomprehensible character map, which includes many more than 6 names on it. There's this fantastic groupings and minor characters that come in and out. Even someone like Roddy's mom, Munira, is so fun that we get to meet her very, very briefly. Okay, so one question that I thought we could start off with is, one of the many luminous and humane things you do in this book is give each of your many characters both moral high grounds and glaring blind spots. How do you write character with such total truth and duality?
Well, when people say That's a great question. They usually don't mean it, but I love this question because it managed to flatter me in so many ways. I think, I do my best when I'm writing. It takes a while to write a book, and I really don't want to be reproducing stereotypes or, stock figures. And I'm interested in presenting human beings as I experience them, and they are quite inconsistent and I wouldn't say they're always unpredictable, but my friends surprise me, and so it's interesting to think what are there are like key differences between a typical fictional character and the human beings I know, and of course I aspire to write a kind of realism. And it's not like a kitchen sink kind of realism where people are, constantly observing the fine points of what it's like to, pour a glass of water. It's that I want to just consciously avoid writing what I probably shouldn't call genre fiction. I feel like I'm like managing to dig myself a hole on question one.
No. This is what when you say genre fiction, I'm so curious because like when I say genre fiction, I think like fantasy, romance. Is that what you mean by genre fiction, or does it mean something else?
That's what I mean. Yeah. And so in literary fiction, of course, the general idea is that I would be writing from my own experience something that only I can write and that only I have experienced. Trying in a sense, it's not a play for immortality because I'm not that stupid, but at the same time, it's an attempt to not waste anyone's time, including my own. And so these characters are, they're slightly schematized, of course, because you can't do a one-to-one thick description of a human being in a book.
Mm-hmm.
I take the highlights and the outward expression of what they're like, but I want to suggest through characterization, like my current ideas of how human beings right now are working mentally.
It's incredible. I mean, all of your books have this sense of, I think I'm going to use the word ambition because there's no one else that does it. These large, I'm curious to know your relationship to this word, but I think of them as maximalist casts of characters, in the sense that like you really are in the minds and know the whole, you feel that you're being confessed the whole backstories and lives and worldview points of 6, I would even venture 10 characters in a single book. And so many of your books have this quality of having these many, many, many very rich characters interacting with one another. What is your relationship to having so many characters? It feels like something that I can think of maybe 50 or 80 years ago. I can think of more novels that had such large character casts, but maybe less in contemporary fiction, which is so strange. Yeah, what's your relationship to having large character casts?
I mean, in a way, I feel tempted to compliment myself here.
Please do.
Because in this book, I do describe the character's backstory, and then I let them loose. So, once they've been presented, that's when we see them go into action. But what I often do is simply characterize somebody in one very carefully chosen sentence.
Mm-hmm. To devastating effect.
Yeah, and I think, it's not like I have talent as a lyric poet or something, but I think I do have a certain talent as a prose author, and I manage to distill people sometimes into very short descriptions that will stick in your head enough that when you're reading the dialogue, you know who you're dealing with. I have to remind myself to put in the physical stuff, what they look like, because I suppose a lot of writers make that mistake of forgetting to say what people look like, but I'm not alone in that.
It
but
is
it
some,
doesn't quite matter to me as much as it should.
it's not something that fiction does particularly. I mean, we need it or can use it, but it's not like the best thing that fiction does. And the way that you so incredibly exploit like a whole life lived distilled down to just a few sentences or even a paragraph. I wonder if this is a good point for you to read a little from the book, because we're talking so much about backstories. Should we go to Toto's backstory?
Yes, you said you liked Toto's backstory. So
I love Toto's backstory.
Well, there's a character. There are several characters in this book, like she said, but don't start thinking it's like Balzac or something. You have 300 people you have to keep track of. I mean, it's really, there are 200 pages in this book, and that's plenty of room for 6 people.
Yes, I agree.
So Toto's an American guy who's acquired the nickname Toto. The East German territory on which the Berlin Wall stood extended several meters out from its accessible western side, and sometimes, as at Potsdamer Platz, much farther. Its vicinity gripped him with an indescribable sensation of freedom. The Cold War was larger than life, always threatening to destroy humankind and plunge the planet into nuclear winter. The superpowers faced off across a scene bristling with weapons. Yet in the shadow of the scene, there meandered a no-man's land where he could ride his bike. The socialist city on the other side was a bargain hunter's heaven. Goods such as dish soap and paint were oddly ineffective, but so cheap that it took him months to make a list that would use up the 25 marks he was forced to exchange on each visit. Wearing undershirts from the evil empire thrilled him. He thought, Ronald Reagan called it the evil empire, just so you know. He thought Berlin's blend of security and destitution must be unique in the world. His experience was not vast. He had seen Amsterdam, but not Barcelona, and the North Sea instead of the Aegean. Would he have stayed in Berlin had he familiarized himself with the price of hard liquor, not to mention 4-course meals with wine, in post-fascist Spain or Greece? He felt at home too quickly. Because he was tall, with blonde hair and pink skin, he was universally addressed in German from the day he arrived. And here I would remark, his looks have a function. That's why they're in this book, because it's not maximalist at all. It's totally minimalist. It's like Edgar Allan Poe. There's no word that is not entirely necessary. Just so you know. Disregarding noun cases and genders, he soon spoke an incorrigible pidgin that was fast, fluent, and heinous. In 1989, the wall fell and newcomers flooded the former East Bloc. Rowdy frat boys rode the wave of cheap beer all the way to Prague. International youth squatted in apartments so lousy they lacked bathing facilities and toilets, convenient to nothing but dangerous raves and labyrinthine ruins. He didn't join them. He had assimilated to West Berlin, moving in circles where the carpetbaggers never strayed. He savored the spectacle from afar, with less intention than ever of going home. He kept switching MA programs, moving from music composition to ethnomusicology to geography, and then philosophy, for a total of 24 semesters, attending occasional lectures if they were held in the evening. Instead of doing his homework, he began to write puff pieces for student magazines, publicizing upcoming concerts by groups he liked. These items, written for peanuts with editing cadged from girlfriends, were well liked by the bands, and he became a regular on promoters' guest lists. He never tried to crack the market for upscale, para-academic German pop profiles and analysis represented by magazines such as Specs. He found music criticism pretentious. Critics missed the point of rock, he felt. It was not an artistic position. It was loud noise that sounded good when he was drunk. Should I read more?
I love, he works at that car chop shop, right? Is that right after?
He worked days in a warehouse in Kreuzberg, assembling cardboard boxes and wooden crates into which he laid customers' orders of vehicle and machine tool parts, bedded down in Excelsior, or custom-shaped plastic foam. The end of state acquiescence in his studies triggered a crisis. Ordered to write a thesis or quit, he quit. But to stay in Germany without a student visa, he had to prove he was earning real money above board in some legitimate line of work. The warehouse was a chop shop, fencing and disassembling stolen goods it paid in cash. The visa-worthy job had to demand his non-existent professional qualifications and contribute to his non-existent health and retirement insurance. But the crisis was brief. Friends issued him an employment contract for a fictitious position as an advertising copywriter at their web design startup. That could be 2024.
It could. Something that I love about Toto's backstory and so many of the characters' backstories and so much of the perspective of this book is that this book does such a fantastic job about writing about money. And nobody writes about money. Very, very, very few people, especially in contemporary literature, write about money and the flow of money. And it's like this gaping hole so many times when I'm reading. And something that I love about that passage and about the book in general is you indulge all of it. Like, we hear all of it. We don't know exactly how much, except for maybe in the case of Avianca, we do know how much money is in her bank account.
Yes.
But one character, we know the exact dollar amount. But all the other characters, we have a very good sense of like what their real estate holdings are and who's going to be like priced out when the building gets inherited by the heirs. And like the flow of money and how it works in the book is so pervasive and front of mind in a way that feels so true to my lived experience. And so right for this book, which is about opulence and money. Money seems like a central question to me in the book. Was it for you while writing?
Well, yes, because I'm writing about people. Some of them have serious money, inherited money, and I suppose because I went to a boarding school in the Shenandoah Valley, I've known a few rich people all my life. I had a Girl Scout scholarship. But after I graduated from college, I became homeless. I didn't have a place to stay. So I have always been extremely interested in money because I really wanted some. And I think I've heard several writers, not a lot, but I know several writers, and it's always women, who say, I write about money, I put people's income in my work because other people don't do it, and I think it's something that affects a person's life or might somehow influence their decisions.
So deeply. In fact.
And I think what that reflects is something that should just be, because all I have is anecdotal evidence completely, but, it needs to be studied by a sociologist and not just by an online poll or something. But it's my impression that many writers are simply from the upper middle class because that's what gives you the resources to do this job. Because it's not a job, it doesn't pay as a rule. And so the people are really being funded by mom and pop.
Yeah.
And so they don't have these concerns. They've never had them. It's just not something they think of as being emotionally fraught or interesting enough to write about. Whereas for me, it fascinates me. I have a friend. My nickname for him is just the billionaire. That says something bad about me. It's sort of embarrassing to admit it.
Well, one thing I will say is that I have read some books that kind of go, I'm not going to say go all the way the other way, but like there can be a flattening of wealth in literature and film as well, to a point where it like loses any kind, like it's like the abstract billionaire or like the abstract wealthy person. But something that I love about this book, about your characters, is the minutia with which you track the flow of money. Like, we learn about like differences in specific apartment, like rent prices. I'm remembering there's this one phrase where Toto, who we heard the beginning of his backstory, is kind of a playboy, and he gets great energy from sleeping with lots of beautiful young women who are very attracted to him. It's amazing he's found them all. And I think it was that he knew in 2017 when
Berlin is a tough town for women.
Yeah,
it's as bad as New York, probably.
Yeah, he knew in 2017 when finally one girlfriend asked to move into his hovel that's when rent had gotten expensive. Yeah. Like this amazing measure of rent prices that's when you know that the calculus, because he's kind of has this it's portrayed as a record-clad man's pad. Yeah. That was when gentrification happened, when finally one of the women he was sleeping with was like, could I live here? And he was like, no.
Yeah. This reminds me, one of the passages I was thinking of reading is about Livia.
Yes.
Who's a main character. If anybody in here is Sister Europe, it's her.
I love that. That makes so much sense. I did not identify her as that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, she's German, with a very dubious grandfather who was a flying ace in World War II. She does in fact own stuff, but it doesn't seem to make her life any easier. And so this is pretty far through the book. It's chapter 18. When they're already out in the park walking from the Intercontinental to the Burger King. Mm-hmm. So Radi, who's a prince from the United Arab Emirates, is trotting along behind the group of adults and a couple younger people, and he stops to read a memorial plaque about the death of Karl Liebknecht. And I'll just start there. Radi, the prince, was having trouble mustering relevant thoughts and finding it hard to attach himself to the established adult clique. It was easiest to tag along with the kids. He tried to get them moving a bit faster so that the group would stay cohesive. At 6 people, it would have been too wide in full force for the Großer Weg, which is the road that goes through the park, even without bicycles. But the kids kept hanging back, lagging behind to talk about kids stuff. He picked up his pace, moving forward, and set about listening to the others. So money is the issue? Damien was asking Livia. Not exactly. It's the existing rights of the tenants. What happened is my father, remember, he died 3 years ago in Milan, the first week of COVID. There had been no funeral, and before that, no health care. A heartbreaking interlude, unforgotten. Did I ever show you his place in the Drömling? Unsure how to react, both her friends shrugged. It's Toto and Damien. She described an endlessly furrowed landscape of Dutch-style canals, poplar rows, alder groves, and water meadows teeming with life, where the sky was crisscrossed not by contrails, but by flocks of geese and cranes, and the high-speed rail stop at Wolfsburg, prosperous home of the VW plant, was 20 minutes away by car. The problem is, there are people living there, she concluded. If you want to use it yourself, you can evict them, Toto said. I don't want to. They take care of the water buffaloes. The Asian kind, not the mozzarella kind. They eat the baby trees to keep the marshes open. I can't take care of any water buffaloes. I don't know how, and I don't want to know. Water buffalo are Asian, even in Italy, Toto said. There's only one kind of domestic buffalo. How is mozzarella Asian? Damien said. Marco Polo? With doleful reluctance, Radi, the Arab guy, intervened. They're from India, he said. It's not true that Asians dislike milk and cheese. He winced at playing the Asian again, but it was his one solid, unique selling proposition. Anyway, the tenants are farmers, and I'm not, Livia said. Their animals make the place beautiful, and it needs them. But it's my place now, and I could have horses. What are you saying? Toto feigned mystification. I had this idea. That you could go live in the middle of nowhere and make friends with horses. He said, forget it. You're a city girl. You'd go crazy. I don't want to farm, she said. I have this idea of creating a reception center for traumatized refugee children with therapy horses, where the surroundings are natural and alive. Refugee children are 17, Toto said. They don't want to live in the friggin' dwindling. I mean young children and their mothers, she clarified. Having expected a tete-a-tete with Damien, she hadn't given it much thought. She added, because it had just occurred to her, that the older children could attend secondary school and become apprentices at Volkswagen after they learned German. Damien asked whether the tenants had the big house or some dependency. They could move to the smaller house, she said. The gatehouse, it's closer to the barns. They could care for the horses. We get EU money for the buffaloes because of the meadows. We could also get money for horses. So what's the problem? Toto asked while Damien was still thinking. I don't want to live in my father's house in the Drumling, but I want to live in a peaceful, beautiful place with horses. Do you know what I mean? I get it, Toto said. You want to change your life without changing your life. I'm starting to hate English gardens. She's a designer of English gardens. Everyone wants them. They look like golf courses. I love the usefulness in the Drumling, the square meadows with the little ditches. Animals don't care about aesthetics. They just eat and shit. It's so perfect. You could set up a foundation for the refugee families and hire social workers, Damien suggested. But will the buffaloes hurt my horses? Lydia asked. Buffaloes are ferocious. That's Cape Buffalo, Toto said firmly. They live in Africa. Water buffalo are just wet cows. Do you even ride? Not in the last years, she admitted. You could get mini ponies, Damien suggested. The refugees could play with them. She shook her head. There's too many wolves. You can't have small animals without sheepdogs. I don't like sheepdogs. Too aggressive. I like Fisty. That's her poodle. She glanced down at him as though looking for comfort in his uncritical acceptance of her plans. They walked a few paces in silence. Toto said, So, you're attracted to this place, and it's yours now. It burdens you with potential and responsibility, but all you really want to do is visit there every so often, and not even long enough to have a coffee, because you don't like the tenants. Damien, trying for a more judicious mood, said, Is the house beautiful? She shrugged. It's a Prussian baron's manor. It would take millions to make it good for living. You can go there in summer, but it's not renovated. It's tile ovens, the way these houses were before, but the view, it's of nothing. Perfect emptiness, no hand of the designer, just the farmer, like being the first person, like being Eve. She was turning abstracted and dreamy. What an odd idea, Damien thought, to equate utilitarian things with nature. Was she equating farmers with animals? Or artists with God? No, he realized. She was saying that farmers were like God, while she was something else, something less valuable, the alienated subject in need of justification. I'm kind of regretting reading that. It sounds so dreary.
I think it's hilarious.
This book, I gotta say, the reaction I got from like big magazines was, what a great novel. Sorry, we can't excerpt it because there's not a single passage that stands alone. And so like I'm proud of that because it means I succeeded in writing a self-contained novel with a big arc. But on the other hand, like it makes it really hard to read from it.
I see what the magazines were talking about, which is why you all need to buy the novel to read the whole thing. It is a book that I think is, like the texture of it is hard to capture in short passages. But what you just read exemplifies one of the many things you're famous for.
Lucia.
Ciao, Lucia. Okay. Which is that you're famous for your play-like excruciatingly smart and witty dialogue, which is on full display here. These characters banter in the book about everything from the 2022 Venice Biennale to zines to Nazi history. It's totally omnivorous and electric. What's your dialogue method in general and for this book more specifically?
I mean, when I was young, I wanted to write plays. So
I didn't
when
know
I was
that.
in high school, and I wrote plays, and I always so I always had it in my head that a dialogue should include, it should center on a conflict, and allow a drama to progress. But at the same time, there are some much more dramatic dialogues in here than the one I just read. But I didn't want to spoil everything. It's so sort of interwoven. I mean, chapter 2 kind of gives away the store, but I don't want to read chapter 2. But anyway, my dialogue method is simply to try and, I mean, it's play-like, that's for a reason, because I do want the dialogue to be readable for its own sake, as advancing a conflict and while characterizing the people involved.
It's totally magnetic. Has anyone ever adapted any of your work for a play?
No.
They should. Would you like that, or would you be tentative?
Well, I would like it a lot. But I mean, I want to write something soon that I want to adapt to a play, but it would be something new.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting. Okay, Sister Europe is it's the only book you've written set very close to where you have made your home for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
What was that like, writing in a space that is near your home?
Well, I've always written in settings that I was very familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't run out of material or settings yet. It's I don't yet have to spend 3 years in a library writing a book. I mean, I just probably got a grant to do that because I want to write something set in like 1905 and 1925. But until now, I was writing about things I'd been immersed in my life. So, this sort of just joins Tidewater, Virginia in the 80s and the mid-Atlantic squatter scene in Nicotine.
Of course.
In the 90s. It sort of joins them on the list because this book is set on February 21st, 2023.
Yes.
In Berlin. And because I knew I wanted to set it on February 21st, 2023, I did in fact walk that night from the Intercontinental to the Burger King.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Just to make sure I got the weather right.
Do you do you identify this book and most of your work as social realism? I know labels are lame. I know they're lame, but
critics and people have a way of calling my books wacky and zany, and the problem is, I think it has something to do seriously with the sheltered lives that they lead as members of the upper middle class. I mean, like when I told a very successful writer I know about my downstairs neighbor, I said, okay, he's an Iraqi refugee. He has a bit of dwarfism. One leg, but I shouldn't be talking about him on YouTube. Anyway, I described my neighbor, and this person bursts into gales of laughter and says, "Oh," as if I had invented a wacky zany character. Well, guess what? Outside the world of successful people, who tend to do their best to be outwardly similar. They all wear stylish clothes and have good manners and clean faces and all these things you might expect from an upper middle class person. Outside that world, there's even a lot of superficial diversity, and you have to what is the opposite of diversity? It's homogeneity. And a lot of people, when they're writing, they explore character in a very exquisite, precise way because they're not allowing any of the superficial diversity that my world is full of. And so when I say that this is a party at a gala dinner at a hotel, and there's a guy with his own little publishing house, and there's a woman from a wealthy family who's related to a lot of Nazis, and an architecture critic. To me, it doesn't seem like a motley crew of eccentrics at all. It's just like people.
I have one more question for Nell, and then maybe we'll open it up to audience questions. So this is your one question warning. That if you have a question percolating, prepare to deploy it. That is amazing that you walked the walk of this book on the actual day that it was set. How did this book begin for you? When did it come to you? When did you know you had is it the vessel for a book, or like the beginning of a book, or I'm not sure how you think about it.
I know what gave me the idea for this book, and it was a gala dinner.
Shockingly.
Much like the dinner in the book.
Wow. That's amazing. Were you served dinner very late? Did you have Michelin mystery meat?
Things did drag on quite a bit, but it was a different royal family that was involved.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, of course, the draw for I guess a motley crew to put on their Sunday best and head down to a luxury hotel, thinking they were going to get like God's own free food.
That's where you always go wrong. That's where I always go wrong. When you think you're going to get a good free meal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hubris. That's the beginning of tragedy.
It is. Oh my gosh. I mean, Nell, I could talk to you about this book forever. I love it so much.
Yeah, I can't believe how fast the time has gone.
I know. Yeah, sign us up for a talk show. Our wonderful audience, do any of you have questions for Nell? Yes.
Hi.
I'm struck by your so vivid analysis of class and money, and I'm curious to hear what maybe your experience and how that's translated into writing of living in the States and then moving somewhere else and seeing what are similarities or differences that you've seen in those two different cultures. Okay.
Well, I mean, class in America is a topic all of its own. Because, I mean, the poor here are really, really poor. They'd be poor if they lived in Chad. They have less than $2 a day. That's an American poor person is one of the poorest people you could ever hope to meet. Whereas Germany has a welfare state, there's a constitutional right to a home and food. And so class, while there is a lot of, there's an entrenched old aristocracy, just as there is in France. They're republics, there is no aristocracy, yet these families do in fact still have money and a certain amount of influence, and just it looks really good on your resume if you have one of those names. That's a class issue. And people from immigrant communities, it's very hard to change your name to something just German sounding. Funny as it sounds, I think in America that's a great freedom people have here. They can call themselves whatever they want. if they do want to escape their past, they can reinvent themselves, and it's very hard in Europe. It's the way it's easier in California than it is on the East Coast. It's that much harder in Europe.
You know, it's so interesting. This is a whole other conversation, but I know some of you are here. I am a native of this fine city in this state, and it is for my pre-internet. I think for my parents' generation, who both also grew up here, like California and San Francisco specifically, really was there were a lot of people here who maybe were looking for a new start. They talk about that a little bit. It being this being a city specifically where people come to forget a past, and California more largely being that place. I mean, my husband's family had a family member, his grandfather's brother, who did something deeply unsavory, didn't kill someone, but got close. And yeah, he came here to San Francisco, as one does, which is interesting. I mean, I think that, I'd like to think that architecture of a place in good ways still has its presences here, but I think maybe for my parents' generation, it was really, really, especially pre-internet, it was much, much stronger.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question at all.
Yeah, sorry, and then you sparked a tangent for me. My apologies. took that over with my own feelings.
Yeah, but I think I meant what I said. I mean, class in the UK is notoriously intractable. And maybe there are German cities where it's also intractable, but in Berlin is just notoriously a place where the classes mix. And it's partly because for a long time it was not a wealthy city at all. It's 10 years now that the rents have started to rise, and companies that truly employ people are coming to Berlin now. You can get a job in Berlin if you want one. And before then, it was mostly known for nightlife, and nightlife, especially queer nightlife, is notoriously a place, because it's not a marriage market. If people are going out at night to find someone to marry, they're going to be especially attentive to class differences. But if what they want is something else entirely, they are just very, very flexible.
That is such a generous vision of the rave. I love it. Any other questions? Sam.
I wanted to hear a little more about the title, maybe, and because so much of this book is men perceiving and describing women and talking about what women are and how they are, and we don't really get the big Avianca reveal spill until the end, and it's mostly Toto and Damien and Roddy talking to themselves and each other about what women are like.
Yes.
And I just was curious to hear you talk about your motivation for writing that, if it had anything to do with the title, which I'm also curious about.
Well, the title comes from a Psychedelic Furs song that just, one of my best friends is just very fond of this song. So I thought, I'll name a book after a favorite song. But when these characters talk about women as much as they do, because one of them is, being nailed to his own personal cross by his own neuroses about gender identity, because he has a daughter who's trans, and she's not very old yet at all. She's all of 15, and so in his mind, it's still, is she or isn't she? And because their friend Livia is so beautiful and so wealthy, and in her attractiveness, motivates men to do things they wouldn't otherwise do, and every straight man who knows her is definitely sort of in love with her and has a crush on her for reasons of just her essential beauty that's very hard to not notice. And so this kind of power that women can have, and at the same time, if women aren't doing that, if they're not being beautiful, they have that's a tremendous shortcoming in the eyes of men. So these are age-old problems that don't seem to be vanishing from the face of the earth. So I treat them, along with the issue of whether Stalin was secretly cute. And, men do play a role, and also I have to establish like their views on gender identity, in part because Damien is so convinced that he's a totally butch guy, and he's so not, and that's not entirely unusual because it depends on where exactly on what level of expression or essence you locate gender identity. And for him, like, his genitalia are enough for him. He figures, okay, I'm a guy, and I'm pretty good at it too. He doesn't think he has to perform much. He just has to perform, like he has to wear a tie, he has to wear decent looking shoes. In any case, yeah, I am interested in those questions, so that they're right there in the book.
This book has some of the most eloquent and spare and incredible passages about different characters performing gender in all these different ways that are so affecting, and ones that I know it seem like a reflection of like the contemporary moment that I'm living in better than any other book I have I've ever read. So
thank you.
Any attempt at it's so funny talking about it with you tonight. Now the book is resisting discussion. Like I'm finding it difficult for me to articulate how it addresses these big questions for me as a reader so effectively. These big questions around like how we each perform gender for ourselves and for each other. It sounds so like academic when I put it that way, but
I think it's because I'm so careful. I mean, the reason that I see is that I'm so careful not to explain myself, but to tell a story, which is something this book is also about. It's about storytelling.
Deeply.
There's an obsessive storyteller character who's constantly telling stories. That's why she's been dating Toto online for months without ever meeting him, because she always has a story about why she can't make it this time. And the literary award that the gala dinner centers on is being given to also a compulsive storyteller. And that's something I guess I notice about myself, that even when I'm asked to speak in academic sounding, 6-syllable nouns, what I come up with is anecdotes, trying to illustrate. I can only think of examples, and they have to be in a narrative form. And so it makes it hard to, Toto's backstory is his backstory. I don't say Toto was an arrogant, self-satisfied. I stay away from adjectives and say what he's up to.
Yeah, just such wonderful, captivating, propulsive effect. Sister Europe by Nell Zink. You should get it. No, thank you for being here with us in San Francisco tonight. Woo!
Thank you very much.